All right.
Wow, it's
Are
9:30.
we ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Ready?
All right.
All
How about if we
right.
introduce Marcie? I'm Claudia
Yes.
Beckner. I work at Lawton Public Schools. I'm one of the assistant directors of special ed and supervise our 18 to 21 transition program.
And I'm Marcie Stickney. I'm a transition specialist with Norman Public Schools and work closely with this group of people with OTC.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today on our first webinar. And like they said, it's awesome to have Claudia and Marcie to present this. Lawton and Norman have some really robust transition programs, and so I'm excited to hear them speak. If you guys have questions as you go, you can type them in the chat, as well as we'll have some time at the end for you guys to ask questions. If not, I'm sure they'll have their contact info on the slides that I'm sure they would let you guys email them any of the questions that you guys have as well. So without any further ado, you guys take it away.
All right.
Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. We're glad to be able to present today. So we're going to go over a few little things about basics about transition. We're going to kind of blow through these slides. So if you have any questions about that, be sure to put those in the chat. So why do we address transition? It's really about outcomes for our students and their families. And of course, IDEA requires that we address transition in Oklahoma for all students as they enter the 9th grade or turn age 16, whichever happens first. So what do we need to do for transition? So the 1997 amendments to IDEA talks about transition being a coordinated set of activities which promotes movement from school to post-school. So the long range for our students. We're looking at post-secondary education, career training, adult services, and independent living.
Shirts are free sale and only can be purchased in Miss Baker, Area 212, March 25th, April 12th.
Can somebody please mute? Can you guys please keep your phones or computers muted? Thank you.
Here we go. Okay, next slide. So the IDEA transition requirements from 2004 kind of updated some things. It's basically the same, but specifically looking at that coordinated set of activities, looking at the outcomes, moving from school to post-school, and the bulleted items there. We also found in ICAP, so that's Individualized Career Academic Plan. We're going to talk about that and the other starred items here. So post-secondary education, vocational education, employment included supporting employment, and that's where the Work Investment Opportunity Act and the Pre-Employment Transition Services will come into play. So you can kind of see the rest of the things in those bullets. And post-school employment objectives also are in the ICAP. So those other state and federal laws and regulations that align with the IDEA transition requirements, as we move to the future, we need to make sure we make those connections. The first is the Work Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is a Department of Labor, federal law, and the Individualized Career Academic Plan, which is a state. So what WIOA, as they refer to it, addresses is the importance of preparing all individuals with disabilities for some kind of post-school employment. Schools have to focus on offering what's called pre-employment training services, which you'll hear referred to as pre-ETS, which includes job exploration and counseling, work-based learning experience, which could be in school or after school, outside of the traditional school setting, internships, apprenticeships, those kind of things, counseling opportunities for what comes after, comprehensive transition programs after post-secondary education or post-secondary education programs, workplace readiness and training, which also focuses on social skills and independent living, and instruction in self-advocacy. One of the changes here with the pre-employment training services is that schools will need to document pre-ET services, especially for those students who may not be competitively employed and who may end up in sub-minimum wage employment. So it's really about getting everybody the opportunity to have at least minimum wage employment if that's possible, and documenting well through pre-ETS opportunities if they're not. A couple of resources here for you on the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, WIOA. There's a link for the Zero Center from a PowerPoint that was done by Kim Osmani and Teresa Flannery on WIOA, and there's some great information in there to show you what it's all about. And Marcie's going to click on that right quick, and what we want to show you is where to find that on the Zero Center page. So you kind of scroll down on the 2017 presentations and find that. But what's important here is this documentation of transition services for sub-minimum wage. There it is. Okay. So this is what schools would be looking at. It's actually a DRS form that they would need to document what the student has had while in high school or while in public school regarding those 5 areas of pre-ETS.
And it will not, there are 3 pages to this, and it will only let me show 1.
And I think we have the next slide maybe shows it.
Oops, sorry guys.
Granddaughters playing with your
Sorry.
computer.
Here we go.
And then the other document, there's the pre-ETS document. And on the previous slide, the other document that was there was an actual explanation of what pre-ETS is that comes from OU's NCDET, which is the, okay, Marcie, help me, National Center for Disability and Employment Training.
Education and Training.
Okay. So they have a fact sheet on pre-ETS, which the link is there for you to be able to look at that whole document. It's just a 2-page document.
And they are offering that now as there's I think it's a 3-year grant. They're partnering with the Department of Rehabilitation Services, and so they are piloting it for school systems, and you'll hear more about that in the future.
And I understand one of our schools down in our area, small school, is involved in that already, and kind of a focus on the smaller districts. It sounds like. The ICAP. So the ICAP is through State Department of Education guidelines. All students will have to go through the individualized career academic plan process, which strangely sounds an awful lot like transition that we do in special education. So it's going to start with the 9th graders for next school year, 2019-20, but they can start it as early as 6th grade, and it's to be updated every subsequent year. My understanding on this is that it's not like a graduation checklist that we've had in the past, but actually more doing some assessments similar to our transition assessments, having some post-secondary goals and working towards those goals, looking at experiences in service learning and work environments like apprenticeships, or internships, mentorships, job shadowing, and others. So from my little view over here at Lawton Public Schools, I see that the ICAP process and the transition components in the IEP should be intertwined. Next slide.
So it's slow because
okay.
It took about 60 seconds.
Yeah, so we apologize for that. And this is the career fields that ICAP looks at, and it's based on CUTR, which is a company program based on research, what should be going on. So these are the 6 career fields and the 16 national career clusters. There's a link there on the bottom that you can find that at the State Department website. And then this is the career development curriculum for
sorry guys.
That's okay. That's promoted in ICAP. So you can see career awareness, career exploration, and career preparation going from kindergarten through 8th grade to ninth grade to college. So, you know, some of our kiddos, I think about this, and I think some of our kiddos might be a little bit behind as to where they do. I'm thinking about our 18 to 21 transition program. They're kind of still, some of them in career exploration, and then some career preparation.
So what we're going to head to now is what makes a great transition. Dr. David Tess, a professor at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, he's been involved with transition, the advancement, supported employment since 1980. He has a collection of over 200 publications, and he focuses totally on supportive employment and transition. And through all his research, he has decided or suggests that student involvement in their own IEP process is a key to a great transition. Work-based learning, which we're going to talk a lot about, so that would be kind of community involvement, being out in a work area, employment, and experiencing that, whether it's paid or unpaid internships. What this does is it builds vocational hard and, most importantly, those soft skills. An employer can teach hard skills. An employee typically comes with soft skills. And then a very important key is interagency collaboration. Schools need to work actively to connect their students with adult agencies and the community. Both Lawton and Norman collaborate with a lot of outside agencies. That's key to our programs, because not just for the links, but also a lot of times you can have braided funding. So funding is not totally on the school system. The predictors. What predicts a good, successful outcome? Well, the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, or you will see a lot, NTACT, they have gathered, researched, and determined that predictors that correlate to post-school successful outcomes relate heavily to these components in this PDF you see on the right. And so that would include the bullets here. Career awareness, community experiences, goal setting is key for our students. All of us as adults, we make goals naturally. Our students do not understand the process, so that's a key to teaching and can lead to successful transition. Inclusion, paid and unpaid work experiences, self-care, and you can read all of those. You'll notice over here on the PDF, inclusion in general education, parent expectations, self-care and independent living. Those three hit 3 of our transition IEP goal areas of education, employment, and independent living. So this can help if a student is needing goals in a typical area. You can kind of look and see where this hits when you're writing your transition goals. This film, we're not going to watch it because it's 9 minutes long. But what it does, our school district made a film to promote a Disability Awareness Employment Month. And so we talked to a lot of our business partners, we talked to students, we talked to parents, and it's very insightful as to how it opens the eyes of the business community, how it strengthens the self-determination of the students. And as for a parent, it opens their eyes in, oh my gosh, I should have been doing this, or oh my gosh, I can't believe how wonderful my young adult is doing. So hopefully you can watch this in your spare time. Discussion questions. So is this where I turn it over to you? This is our meat and potatoes of our presentation. Claudia? So
we're going to address these 3 basic questions, and you'll see a red marker slide, or the font will be in red for these as we segue through each one. So we want to talk about, how do you implement community-based instruction in transition programs and activities? Who should you collaborate with? and how do you present this to your school or district administration to get started if you haven't kind of put your toe in the water already. So how do you implement transition programs? One of the key things I think about transition is it's all about what's going to happen after. So a lot of it has to do with how the individual is going to be involved in the community in some way post-school. So community-based instruction is actually could be considered a good basis for transition activities. So both Marcie and I, in our vast years of experience, kind of have been involved in community-based instruction in one way or another. And as we go through this, you'll kind of see how it's really kind of linked to transition. So we're talking about direct instruction in community sites, small groups, ideally like a 1-to-3 ratio. And we know that doesn't always happen, but being in the community, no matter what the size group, is better than not being in the community. It's part of a comprehensive functional curriculum. Skills training conducted in real world settings with environments matching student needs, interests, and IEP transition goals. It's in the presence of the general population. So we always think about least restrictive environment in the school setting, in our placements of students with disabilities through the IEP process. Well, this is like LRE in the community. So it's really kind of cool, in my opinion. And we're going to have continued and repeated visits to the same locations in the community so the kids can kind of learn those areas and generalized skills and practice. And then using naturally occurring cues, materials, and individualized student instruction. And all of our slides kind of have some links there if there's an outside resource for that. So make sure you check into those things. So in our district, what our teachers say is we're going on a field trip. And that kind of is a hard pill for me to swallow because community-based instruction and transition activities that you do in community settings, and the school even is considered a community setting, but it's not a field trip. So that's the biggest takeaway from here is it's not a field trip. It's purposeful instruction, sustained, repeated, and you're helping students gain skills in all those different areas of employment, daily living, communication, safety for so many of our students, self-help skills, mobility and travel, how do I continue to learn as an adult in the community, behavior, leisure activities, financial literacy. So it's not that special activity, weekly class outing, or field trip. All of those things are valid instructional activities, but they're not the same as purposeful community-based instruction that's on a regular basis, systematic, and designed to meet the individual student needs. And in the transition setting, it would be aligned with those transition components in the IEP. So hashtag CBI is not a field trip. So locations that need to be identified. So this is one of those work backwards things for me. Look around in your community and see what's there. So this one, hashtag what's in your community. So in my experience, I've worked with some of the small schools around the Lawton area first before I came to work with Lawton Public Schools. And I worked at Geronimo, little tiny district. And we were doing community-based instruction, actually probably before some of the transition requirements were in the law. And we just looked at what was there. So there was a senior nutrition center, there was a city hall, there was a little store, there was a little cafe. So we engaged in activities in those areas. And that was at the time of service learning. So that was kind of a neat thing for us to do with engaging with the nutrition center in that community. So businesses, retail, service, manufacturing, transportation, shopping. So that's all that other retail stuff that varies from supermarkets to convenience stores to all of our kids want to work in a video store, you know, they like that. So, or a gaming store, dining, services, all of those different things. So the learning domains for CBI and life skills would be looking at the areas of community, communication, decision-making, interpersonal skills, personal management, recreation, leisure, and career vocational. there's so many different opportunities if you just kind of scan the information that's on that slide. One of the things that we do is work on using public transportation, because we actually have a mode of public transportation in Lawton now. So those are just some of the many things that you can do, and they tie to vocational and they tie to independent living. This is just a little thing that I thought would be neat to share with you. So we have a 18 to 21 transition program for students whom the IEP team feels need more transition services and getting those linkages in place. And so they do a rotation of classes, and one is kind of like recreation leisure. So they make crafts, they do a variety of different things. So this is connecting with our city government that provides, City of Lawton, that provides us many opportunities for placements for students. And this particular picture just shows some of the students from that program. That, I don't know if you can see the girl on the left holding a little, looks like fall craft scarecrow kind of man there, and going out and you know, presenting that to someone in the community.
And unfortunately, when we did this from I'm at my public school, and it will not allow me to go to Facebook.
Oh, so we practiced when Marcie was home on her snow day. So meaningful instruction. I think Marcie, you know, talk a little bit about this.
So what meaningful instruction, we can't just throw our students out there, drop them off at work and leave them. We need to follow up. So we need to have some strong, meaningful instruction. We need to remember again that it's just not a one-day activity. It's not a field trip. It's a continuance of direct, systematic instruction, and it should include the following, these bullet points: communication and integration. So once your program has begun, you want to make sure your staff is making sure that each student is communicating with their supervisors and their coworkers. It's extremely important. You might even need to send a script with them. We also might want to team with our speech paths if you have some in your district, because they hopefully would be able to maybe help prior to them being out in the community or in the job site, or they might even be able to visit that job site. And then generalization. The skills that we're teaching, we want to generalize into the community. So it's important that we expose students to all these, but we have to repeat the opportunities and practice them over and over. We want to make sure that we're collecting data.
Okay.
Very important that we have data, so that number one, I give all my students grades. So my work instructors keep data, my job coaches keep data, because they are getting a grade in the grade book. But we also, more importantly, need that data to see if we're progressing. Are we getting the students to where they need to be so they can be successful? And then you need to document. You must be able to show the documentation, because all of this will feed into those IEP. And let's see, so important vocational skills. I think probably the number one, and Claudia, you might agree, is soft skills.
Yes, ma'am.
Those soft skills are probably the most important vocational skills that a student can get. And so we have to have a curriculum that will prepare them for a job, and it needs to be a job they intend on entering. It doesn't need to be a job that I want, but what they want. So in that post-secondary goal, what job are they trying to get to? That's what we need to start working on. It needs to have a broad-based knowledge and skills. And for some of our students with more severe disabilities, those specific skills are necessary for their success in the workplace. I had a student that held a job. He told all his coworkers he was going on a vacation. He failed to tell the boss that he was going on a vacation. When he came back, he went in for his schedule and they had let him go because he did not show up for 2 weeks. So again, it's very important that we teach all the skills, the academic, the reading, the math, but the problem solving, the speaking, communication, and computer technology skills are keys. We do, look at us today. We are doing things with technology, and that's the way the world is going. Occupational and vocational skills. What are needed? Well, it might include the bullets you see here. Very important to know how to ask appropriate questions. If I finish my job, what am I going to do next? Initiation is key to success in the workforce. Most of my students, when they get their grades back from their supervisors, that initiation piece on a 1 to 5, if I see a 3, I'm dancing on the table because most of them are 1 or 2s. Using a time card, punch clock, computer, arriving to work on time, calling in when sick, requesting time off, using the appropriate voice and tone, accepting instructions. This is the other piece on our grading sheet, accepting criticism. It's usually low on most of my students because they don't understand that it's not directed critically at them, it's directed to help them improve in their work task. So we have a lot of conversations on that, knowing how to start, focus, and complete tasks, and then knowing appropriate interaction. It is so important for our students to know how to interact with others. So not just in the workforce or workplace, but also out in the community. They need to know about social problem solving. We really need to know our boundaries, not just am I in your space, but how do I communicate? With technology today and phones, we have a lot of issues with these sexual boundaries, so we need to also teach that. Here we go. I don't know, should we click on it?
Let's see if it'll work. So this is just a little video that was on our local news about our 18 to 21 transition program. You'll have to scan down a little bit to get the one below it is where you can click to play it. So this will just give you a little visual, well maybe, yes.
Students in Lawton are gaining work experience through the LPS transition program. The partnership with the city of Lawton has allowed student internship opportunities at the Owen Center for the last 3 years.
7 News reporter Hunter McCatherine spoke with the city's activity coordinator about how the program prepares students.
Monty Follow, the LPS transition program prepares special needs students for life in the workplace by focusing on overall development and skill building.
It's a jump start where we prepare them for maybe being a cashier, a receptionist, a secretary, also janitorial. In some different places, they have different skills to offer them.
Michelle Rosario works with students who have special needs at the Owen Center. She says the jobs that are available to the students are determined by their ability.
If they can do things like the janitorial, mopping and sweeping and things like that. If they have a disability where they cannot do those, we find something else that they can do, like answering the telephone or maybe filing, things that would be in the workforce.
Students do different jobs at different locations each year they participate in the program.
With the program, they may not come to this particular center. They may go somewhere else and work, but that gives them that experience where they were here at this particular location, then they go to another location where they may have another skill that they can use.
This is Jonathan Copesaw's second year working within the LPS transition program. This year, he's been working at the Owen Center doing janitorial duties. He says one of his favorite jobs is decorating for the holidays.
Yeah, decorations. Yeah, decoration. Help decorate the room with Halloween stuff. Take it down when Halloween's over.
Rosario says by working with the students, she is able to change their lives, but also they change hers.
They change me. They change how I feel, how I see out of their eyes, and how I can make something easier for them with their disability and make it work for them.
Most students join the program their junior or senior year of high school. Rosario says with the training the students receive, they will be ready to work and be productive citizens in the community.
So our students in the transition program can apply when they're juniors or seniors for that program, and it gives them an opportunity to gain independent living, daily living skills, and work skills. And we'll talk a little bit about collaborations with DRS and how we're able to even do some paid work experiences for students. So some of the communication skills that students need, and we kind of, Marcie talked about some of these in the previous slides. The communication is really important for students, following and giving directions, communicating, understanding and processing information. I think about a student that I have that works here and does a schoolwork study job through DRS in our department, clerical skills, and it's a process for him, and he's been one of the best workers that we've had. But sometimes just simple copying that I might be able to just tell a secretary, here, this is what I need. I have to go through more steps with him to ensure that he understands it. The social and interpersonal skills, that particular student does answer the phone and takes messages while the secretaries are on their break. And Marcie talked about preparing a script. So that's what we did for him at the beginning, was prepare a script for him to follow in answering the phone. So you can kind of see all those various different areas of communication that students need to have and are things that we can work on with them. Some skills that are needed for independence and successful outcomes include self-determination, knowing their disability and their accommodations. That's really interesting, and I think the more we do on the earlier with students as far as participating in the IEP and self-directed IEP really helps in this area, because our district is not real strong in that area. And so when we have those kids that apply for the transition program, the 18 to 21 transition program, and we do an interview, we ask them about their disabilities, and some of them cannot identify them. So that's one of the things that that program does, is work on disability awareness and students identifying their own accommodations. Looking for jobs, filling out job applications and other paperwork for a variety of reasons that they will need as adults in the community, writing resumes and cover letters, obtaining necessary identification. That's interesting too, because that's something our transition program works on with students, and having interviewing skills.
I'm sorry, it's about a 30-second delay. I'll have to get quicker. So the assessment and planning, Claudia's going to talk about, these are key to successes also.
So we have to look at, for all students in the transition process, doing assessments, some kind of transition assessments. And this slide particularly talks about vocational assessment on the first bullet. So there's lots of different things that we can use for assessments. And in that ICAP process, the Oklahoma Career Guide, or OK College Start, will be another resource for our students with disabilities. But there surveys, formal, informal, just a variety of types of vocational assessments that we should employ in this process. And it's an integral part of building your transition program, because you need that assessment data to know where to go with those students, then even in developing their own post-secondary goal. We can look at assessments for transition in a variety of areas in addition to vocational, but the academic skills, daily living skills, personal and social skills, occupational and vocational, as well as self-determination is another area of assessment that's very important.
And I believe we have this later on, but the Zaro Center at OU has a fabulous link that will take you to free assessments.
Yes. I think on the next slide, we're going to talk about some of those. So for me, the Zaro Center is like a gold mine right here in Oklahoma that we need to access and access for resources related to transition. And I don't think we do it enough. So that's one of the things I'm always kind of visiting and revisiting with our staff. So at the Zaro Center at OU, you can find resources for transition that include those assessments and self-determination. The Oklahoma Transition Council and the Oklahoma Transition Institute information is on the Zaro Center website, and it includes all the Oklahoma Transition Institute presentations since 2002. So that is like a wealth of information there that we need to tap into. There are also selected transition presentations by Zaro Center staff, and Zaro Center focuses on transition. So there's doc students will do presentations, and they choose certain ones to put up there on the Zaro Center website, and then transition education materials. So on this slide, if you haven't really started doing a lot with transition, these resources and free lesson packages that are on the Zaro Center website are a place to start. So even if you just start with the self-directed IEP, but there are the me lessons, there's whose future is it anyway that relates to all the TAG constructs. And TAG is the transition assessment and goal generator that's available through the Zaro Center. And the State Department of Education always has transition trainings throughout the year, and they've done that for the past several years. And when you attend those, you get free TAG credits for the TAG transition assessment that's available through the Zaro Center. The links there will take you to that information. Marcie, can you click on the first one, I think?
Also, the TAG, what's fabulous about the TAG is it develops and writes that you can copy and paste your goals. Your annual goals.
Yeah. So on the left side there is how you navigate, and we just happen to be in the section that's transition education materials. So more than what you see on that little picture on our slide, there's a variety of other things there that can help you look at other areas. The bell ringers are really great, and that's an easy thing for a special education teacher to integrate, as well as a general education teacher.
So it's slowly opening. There we go. So you can pick one, have it up on your board.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually a PowerPoint. So if a teacher is presenting that in class, they'll have that PowerPoint and just work through those different bell ringers throughout the school year.
Okay, let's see if we can get back to our presentation. So final thoughts on community-based instruction. Community-based instruction, research has told us, is a key to successful transition. It's an integral part of the curriculum for students with cognitive delays. We also in our district find for our students that are at risk, this is a huge piece that helps them also. We also understand it's crucial to achieving your long-term outcomes, where we want our students to participate in their communities. We want an inclusive society. We want our students to be able to take the skills they've learned and use them successfully. We need instruction that's carefully planned, again, systematically, and it must be rigorous. The expectations need to be high, and then properly implemented. So a community-based instruction will make the difference for students between a rich and meaningful life and then an adulthood of sitting at home in isolation and boredom. So transition and action. Claudia.
So we've just got some visuals here for you to see what it can look like. This particular set of slides are going to show you vocational training and community skills, work adjustment training, which is a DRS collaboration contract that schools can enter into, project search, which is something that Norman is blessed to have, and 18 to 21-year-old programs. So Marcie?
This first slide, this is our community-based vocational training and community skills. So we in Norman, you can see in the bottom left, we have public transportation. So students on Fridays ride the public cart system around town. They might do a calendar each semester about where they're going to go on a Friday. They study the cart route. If they need to do a transfer, they have to know that. What time do they have to be out there? Then you'll see them working out in the community. Claudia?
So just a few visuals. So work experiences in the community. These were mostly unpaid work experiences, and some of them are our work adjustment training students that get to explore a variety of work clusters through their program. We have a collaboration with Cameron University as well for some recreation, leisure, physical education programming for our students in our 18 to 21 transition program. There's pictures here of classroom activities with work adjustment training as well. This slide also shows classroom activities. So the pictures on the left were actually ladies from the commissary on Fort Sill who, as they were doing the grocery store unit or whatever you want to call it, that retail part, actually came and taught the students in the classroom how to sack the groceries or bag the groceries appropriately. So they got to experience that. And we had some students that went out and did that at a local store as well. I think that picture was in the previous slide. So our high school work adjustment training students did a hands-on job exploration at Walmart. So you can see the students there engaged in different departments in Walmart and actually getting some hands-on experience in what that might be like to work in Walmart.
And so we have several community partners, as does Lawton. And in order to form those relationships, I find that I just have to do door-to-door knocking, going into businesses, asking if they'd like to participate. It's nice to have developed a form letter that you can take in that explains your program. I also include my quick little grade sheet so that they can see what they are going to have to do to grade the students. And then our district has a liability is a key to a lot of businesses when you're forming this. So our district lawyer developed a work agreement form that all business partners, students, families, teacher, and school administration sign, so that we all know what expectations are of all parties. And that makes my businesses feel much more comfortable when they know the liability is on them or off of them and on us. And our school system looks at these programs as the classroom is in the community. So the liability would be the same in a school setting, classroom, or in a community classroom. And so that's how our school system looks at it.
And
Now, here
likewise in Lawton, we develop contracts with, especially for our 18 to 21 transition program, they have a variety of different ongoing sites and get new places all the time. As Marcie said, they go into the community and find partners.
Yeah, it's if I'm out to dinner and I think, oh, my students could do this, I might ask to talk to the manager. And so you just have to step out of your box sometimes and form communication. Networking is key. So this is a picture of our Embassy Suites Project Search Academy. We are fortunate, I believe we're in our 4th year. This is the first class. We have 7 to 8 interns. They do 3 10-week job rotations. You can see here that the students might do banquet setting up, they might do housekeeping. Here we are back in the kitchen. It's just a fabulous partnership. Judy Goldston would be your connection, and she is at the National Center for Disability Training and Education, or Education and Training at OU. Claudia.
Yep. One more slide. So I already kind of alluded to how when I was at Geronimo, I did was able to do some community-based instruction and transition activities with the students. So these are actually some Elgin kiddos and some things they've got going on up there. So they have a raised garden and a greenhouse you can kind of see in the background there. And they've had some community partners working with soldiers from Fort Sill. They do some recreation and leisure activities in the community, as well as bringing people in. I guess they learned about goat farming. The picture on the bottom left, there's not a goat in that picture, but there's goat milk in one of those things. So, vocational exploration, community, and recreation and leisure activities. So really, you just have to create a vision for transition in your school district. You just have to kind of think about it individually with students through the IEP process. So it can be one activity at a time or one student at a time. It can be classroom or site-based or district-wide. And we're just going to show you a couple of, the next 2 slides, a couple of visuals. And I know this isn't really easy to read the small print, but my skills with creating a chart, organizational chart, aren't that great. But you can look at different pathways possibly for students and then fit your programs underneath there and see where the other things are going to fit in as well. So transition related elective classes, what we do in our district is we use those quote unquote legal course titles. So we have life skills, we have careers, work, study, computer applications, and personal financial literacy. And then for maybe the higher functioning students, the middle functioning students, participation in other general education electives as well. And then we'll have the ICAP kind of intertwining in these pathways, the pre-employment transition services, and the collaborative opportunities are key. So the pre-ETS may be a grant opportunity that will be coming your way soon. Work adjustment training is with DRS. Schoolwork study, which that's paid schoolwork study, is with DRS. Working on the Wichita's STEM camps are through DRS, and Youth Leadership Forum is through Jen at the Developmental Disability Council of Oklahoma. So those partners are so important.
This just gives another visual. So you might have your transition programs. We do 3 tracks: daily living track, employment track, higher education track. So when we sit down in our transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, we have a team of 8th grade education staff. The 9th grade staff meet with the parents. They do a transition IEP at that time, and that's when we introduce what is our pathway. So this just kind of, again, like Claudia said, ties in what programs we have to offer. So you have your ICAPS and your pre-ETS, and pre means pre-employment training services. And I think Claudia spoke on that a lot earlier. Then are we gonna go to a transition center with which we have on each of our sites? Are we gonna do on-the-job community-based vocational training? We are fortunate to have Tech Now computer program with Rick De Renault. Are we going to technology center? Are we doing competitive employment work study, which you might have in your building? Like youth leadership, this just gives you an idea of how and what you might be able to set up. So who do you collaborate with? And I'm not sure if this is mine or yours, Claudia. But
I'm going to interrupt for just a minute to let you guys know that we have 10 minutes and I do have 2 questions.
Okay. So who do you collaborate with? There's a lot of partners possible. We've already talked about some of those. So businesses, churches, families, your local chamber of commerce, outside agencies, nonprofits, neighboring schools and districts, Career Tech, DRS, Oklahoma Works, Workforce Office. So those are all across the state as well. And then a few more ideas: attending the Oklahoma Transition Institute, which is traditionally in the fall, usually October. Out of that Transition Institute, there are regional transition teams that develop and do activities in the region, such as the transition fairs. Look at what DRS has to offer: work adjustment training, schoolwork study, STEM camps, STEP, which is a summer employment opportunity, on-the-job training, supported employment, and more. Look into ICAP in your district. Look at Carl Perkins. So Marcie talked about Tech Now, which is a computer applications curriculum, specialized curriculum with a focus on career development and vocational training. And Carl Perkins has disability, supplemental disability grants that you can get one of those programs started in your district. And Investigate Project Search, and I'm sure maybe this is prompting some other ideas in your mind.
I'm going to throw in that our district has written 3 Carl Perkins grants. The original one started our Tech Now. The next one, because technology gets old quickly, so the next Carl Perkins grant we wrote updated all our technology, and the 3rd Carl Perkins grant we wrote started a greenhouse. So look into those Carl Perkins grants because they're extremely important. They used to fund up to $25,000. I think the last one we did funded up to $15,000, but it can kickstart a program for your district.
And likewise in Lawton, we've written 3, and that's how we started a Tech Now program in each of our 3 high schools. Department of Rehabilitation, School to Work. So we're gonna click on the first one. Yeah, really fast. Maybe not really fast.
So what this is going to take you to is their website, and then I'll scroll down and Claudia will explain.
Particularly the School to Work page is important for us with our students, and we're not going to show any of these videos, but there's great videos here, and if you watch your local news, DRS has great public service announcements about helping people with disabilities gain employment. So you could see STEP, you could see the Working on the Wichita's program, and you can see what they do. But if you scroll to the bottom, there are some great resources that you can share at IEP meetings with your students and your families. So there they are, the Dream Big, and then there's a School to Work transition checklist. And the link for the Workforce Project Search, the Oklahoma Transition Institute, and also the timeline of transition activities and the Transition School to Work folder. So tap into those resources. And we're just going to show you a few more pictures here of Tech Now, Project Search, community resource fairs, transition fairs. and then STEP, WOW, and STEM camps.
You guys ready for questions?
I believe we are.
5, sorry.
That's okay. We're good.
Um,
We're just, if you need a proposal for your district, here we go, Claudia.
Yep. There's a few slides here on how to kind of develop a proposal, and that'll just depend on your district and how you need to do that. So in Norman or Lawton, we might have to prepare something formal in writing. If you're in a small district, you might just be able to go talk to your principal or your superintendent about how to proceed along this way. There's a template here for an action plan. There's links for resources. A new resource that we just came across is the school-based enterprise kit from the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition.
And that will walk you through building your own little program for enterprise or entrepreneurial skills in your school system. So this doesn't necessarily have to be community. Grading sheets.
A few examples of grading sheets here.
More staff development. 10 Sigma has over, I think, 80 different short clips.
And the one we linked here was particularly on developing high school transition programs, and actually has a free resource. After you watch one of their clips, you can sign up for a free resource. So here's one about Foundation for a Successful Transition Program, a little rubric.
So what do we know about the value of work? We know that it is central to everybody's life, and that people often identify themselves by what you do. So our students are going to have these same feelings. We know that a job gives you a sense of accomplishment. It offers you social associations. And we know that it's just the right thing to do for a lot of us, because in our society, everybody goes to work. Everybody communicates with coworkers, and that's what our students see, and that's what they want. Questions? What do we have, Jen?
all right. The first one from Austin, he was wondering if you could share a copy of the liability document. And so if you, any of the documents, would you be able to share, and then I can send out to all the emails that I have?
We can do that, and they may also, Claudia and I did a presentation at OTI a couple years ago, and they might be linked to that presentation too, but we would be glad to share. Claudia?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So we'll make sure we do that. I've got that written on my note to get the documents. From Julie, regarding the OU CART system, there's rumors that OU might dissolve the CART bus system around Norman, and the city of Norman will have their own bus system. There's talk that it could happen July 2019. So what would that cause, or will this cause any issues for you and your students?
Like everyday life issues, if it does, then we just have to think outside of the box and find alternative transportation. I think that we are fortunate in the city of Norman to have some progressive thinking people. So I think it's going to stay. It just might look a little different.
Great.
And in Lawton, for our 18 to 21 transition program, we actually write some transportation, special transportation into the student's IEP to and from school if that's needed. And then we have availability of school vehicles for getting students to work sites. But we do also train them in the use of public transportation, and they utilize that if they can.
And so in our vocational training community-based, because it is a class, we do it 3 hours. So we have students for 3 hours, because it might take a half hour to transport all the students to their individual work sites. They need 2 hours to work in the business, because by the time they set up, do their tasks, tear down, put everything away, let their supervisors know, you need a good 2 hours, and then you might have another half hour of travel time. So we kind of take it as a 3-hour elective class is what they receive, and transportation is provided by the school system. Now in our Project Search, because we look at Project Search as real world work experience. So you get yourself to work, you buy your own lunch, you have to, our students that attend our Project Search have an interview process that they have to go through. They have to be a client of DRS. So one of the key go-tos of this whole presentation is collaborate. And our State Department of Oklahoma's Department of Rehabilitation Services is one of the best in the nations. And so you need to talk to your administration if you do not have a contract with them, because your school district has to have a contract, and then you can start collaboration. Claudia?
That's the work adjustment training and the schoolwork study are the main ones that most schools are involved with, DRS for contract.
And you mentioned the work adjustment training.
Yeah.
So school systems can be paid up to $300 a month for a student that does 3 hours of work adjustment training. So that can be a benefit to your school system also.
That helps you build your transition programs.
Cool.
Thank you.
Let's see. One more question, it looks like, from Julie. She was just curious what the success rates regarding independent living, employment, and post-secondary education in Lawton and Norman Public Schools. In other words, how successful are the students when it comes to transitioning in the areas of independent living, employment, and post-secondary employment?
So I think what I could say is we know the outcomes because we see those students working around town in various businesses. We had our transition fair last night, and we held that at Cameron University, and the teacher from our 18 to 21 transition program said, well, look in there, there's one of our former students working, you know, and the last I knew he was working here, but look, he's now working at Cameron. So hard data in Lawton, no, we don't have that, but the outcomes I think we know are there. And I would guess maybe a 50 to 75% rate on that, as far as, you know, students going out and being linked with the appropriate agencies, getting employment and sustaining employment.
Cool.
So, and our rates are probably about the same. I think our vocational training program, and let me add that a huge part of this successful outcome also is dependent on the family support.
Absolutely.
So we notice that our students that aren't being as successful in obtaining the life that we pictured, maybe the family didn't have that picture, but we pictured, might be because the family support isn't there. Those with family support are very successful. I see some of my students when we practice cart riding, we see them on the cart. They might be going to work, they might be going to the mall to go shopping. We see them all over town working. Matter of fact, in the film that I had in the beginning, one of the employers talked about how excited she was to see past students out in the community working. And then our Project Search. Project Search is driven by strong, successful outcomes. And so 70 to 75% is really high in the world of disabilities for successful employment. And that's what we strive for. And typically we do receive that.
Cool. Just a comment from Denise. She had mentioned she loves 10 Sigma videos and resource. And several people just said thank you, and had the contact information for the pre-employment transition services at OU posted for contact. And so we'll make sure. Are there any other questions that anyone else has? We will be posting this, the recording on YouTube, and then we'll send that out. We'll also send out just a short evaluation so that we can keep getting getting our webinars better and better, as well as if people have topics that you guys are interested in. So any last words, Claudia, Marcie?
Just the last couple of slides have some resources, our contact information, and we included contacts for state contacts for DRS. So Brandy Hurley is a transition program field representative that you can get a hold of, or Renee Sansom, regarding those possible contracts. And one of the things, the STEM camps that they have is based on that, presented by Rick from Tech Now, and they're always looking for locations around the state to do those. So, and the STEP program, so, you know, take advantage of those opportunities. And then we've got the last slide that has the webinar series information upcoming and the past ones and how to link to those.
I'm going to interject that if you have students interested in any of these summer programs, the STEP students participating in employment or the WOW, those students need to be clients of DRS.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important that at 15 and a half or 16 that you help your families sign the students up for DRS. The referral that comes through the IEP is not linking them to be a client. That is
the referral. That's right.
Them as a possible client. They need to then fill out a total application and meet with DRS to get their program started. And they call that an independent transition plan.
It's so important to do more than just send that referral and keep revisiting that with parents and actually helping them go through that application process.
And the other important fact that we would like to see happen earlier in our district is for those that have an IQ of 70 or 75 and below, to make sure those families have applied for the Department of Human Services waiver. Extremely important. So birth.
Yes.
Sign up at birth, or for sure by 5th grade.
Yes, developmental disability services, because that gets them services as adults if they have IQs below 75, I believe, right, Marcie?
Yes, 70 to 75.
Yeah.
And if some of these individuals are going to go to a nonprofit and work, most of those nonprofits do not take private pay, so they're going to take pay from Department of Human Services, this waiver. Yeah. So if you're not on that waiver, you are not going to be able to go to perhaps a workshop or an adult daily activity center. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll be sending out information for the next 2 webinars very soon, and we are in the process of also setting up 3 more. So just keep an eye on your emails. We'll send out the PowerPoint, the recordings for you guys, and thanks for joining us.